So for this week's episode of Business Book Reviews, I'm joined by Caroline, and I'm going to be telling her about this book, which is Girlboss by Sophia Amoruso. She's the CEO and founder of Nasty Gal, and she's also the person who kind of coined this hashtag Girlboss, which has really become a movement in itself. Now, I was lucky enough to go over to LA a few months ago for the first ever Girlboss rally, so I got to see Sophia in action. And this is a book that she wrote actually a few years ago. So it's really interesting because at the time that she wrote this, she was worth something crazy, like crazy billions of dollars. The company went bankrupt a few months ago. So it's definitely gone through some peaks and troughs, which is really interesting, I think, as an entrepreneur. And she was very candid about that. She talked a lot about it at the rally, and she's very down to earth. So in terms of this book, I mean, as far as business books go, I think this is quite a nice one because it doesn't feel too businessy. She talks a lot about just how she got to where she was. It's interesting because a lot of people do have these kind of rags to riches stories, but I think it does sound quite true. She didn't come from a business background. She literally was just really poor and just started reselling vintage clothes on eBay. Cool. In the days of MySpace, she was using MySpace to do a lot of her advertising. So it's kind of, it's very dated, but it's a really interesting story. And very recently, obviously, the Netflix show about her story has just come out. I know we're thinking of watching it tonight.
Tonight, it's in the diary. We're watching it. We have heard good things.
But yeah, no, it's really interesting because she's not your quintessential businesswoman. I mean, you can kind of see that, can't you, from the cover? Yeah. Her boobs are basically out on the cover.
She's got a lot of character, a lot of personality, and obviously I follow her on Instagram, and she's got just a huge following, but she's really cool and a bit quirky and a bit kooky.
Yeah, very, and she has this amazing kind of troupe of friends who definitely, at the Girlboss rally, you definitely saw that. There were some really amazing guests, including like the founder of Instagram, who's just one of her mates.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool, as you do. So I mean, just to sort of summarise the book, if anyone's watching and feels like they don't really have enough time to read it, or they kind of want to get more of a feel of it before they buy it, honestly, this has been one of the better business books that I've read so far this year. I think because it is enjoyable, because it's got that personal story, I like to know more about the entrepreneurs. We both have a real passion, obviously, for entrepreneurial things, but for the people behind the business, and you do get that feel here. It's really lovelily, is that a word? Really immaculately put together. These really cool, you can tell it's designed by someone who is fashionable and knows how to make things look good. And her second book is more of a visual book than a written one. And there's a lot of these really cool kind of, they don't just look good, but they make a lot of sense. A girl boss knows when to throw punches and when to roll with them. Know which fights to start.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I thought I'd read a couple of bits of it that really inspired me. So a girl boss is someone who's in charge of her own life. She gets what she wants because she works for it. And as a girl boss, you take control and accept responsibility. You're a fighter. You know when to throw punches and when to roll with them. Sometimes you break the rules. Sometimes you follow them, but always on your terms. You know where you're going, but can't do it without having some fun along the way. You value honesty over perfection. You ask questions. You take your life seriously, but you don't take yourself too seriously. You're going to take over the world and change it in the process. You're a badass.
Well, that just describes you. Actually, that describes most of League of Her Own members. I really love that. Or if they're not quite in that place, they're aspiring to be that. So I think that's really cool.
And it's great, isn't it?
And it's not too cheesy.
It's not too cheesy.
Don't like too much cheese.
And I think we've both got something in common when it comes to books. If anything gets a little bit too wishy-washy, I think we both switch off. Whereas I like it because it's approachable, it's personable, but there is actually there are business tips in here. There are useful tips that you can actually take away. So you do feel like you are actually reading something helpful and not wasting your time. I think from the start, there's a lot of very much, a lot of inspiration, a lot of kind of crack on, do this. So one of the things says, learn to create your own opportunities. Know that there is no finish line. Fortune favours action, which I think is a really important point. And it was something that one of her speakers at the Girlboss rally was Lily Singh, the YouTuber, who is, I think, she's Superwoman on YouTube. And she was amazing. And her main business tip was just go out and do it. Yeah. Just do it. And it's something that I know when we talked to the authors of The Idea in You, that was one of their main things, this idea, just do it.
Yeah, you can sit and think about it for ages, but you have to take action. Yeah.
So I like that. I like this kind of really proactive. Don't just dream about it, but actually just go and get started. I mean, definitely there's a warning if you're going to read this book. It's quite rude. Like there's a lot of swearing. It's a race balls out towards the extraordinary life that you've always dreamed of. I'm not quite sure how you do that as a female entrepreneur. Hopeless. And you still haven't taken the time to dream up. So I think the idea is that don't spend too much time dreaming about it. Just crack on, and then let sort of obviously visualize your start, but you don't have to have that end goal in mind. Just get cracking, and that end goal, the finish line keeps moving, doesn't it? The bigger your business becomes, the more things change. So I mean, even just like that first initial chapter is just so like you kind of read it and you're like, yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
get you motivated.
I read this in January and it was such a good way to start the year. Like really, like
is it positive throughout? Because I like really positive, uplifting books. Like, is it really positive?
It is positive, and I mean, and it was written before the bankruptcy, so that doesn't get touched upon. So at the time of writing, she was obviously very successful.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that they, and I mean, it's very easy and readable, and you've got these illustrations for every chapter. There's nice little quotes. And that's something that you notice in a lot of business books, sort of inspirational quotes from famous people. I mean, there's cool stuff, like this is her like college pass, and there's a lot of pictures.
She's changed a little bit since then.
Just a little bit. I think the fringe is just a little bit high. You can't even see her eyes in that. But yeah, so it's interesting because I think it does feel a little bit more like an autobiography, which is nice. So you've got loads of pictures of her throughout. And because she's talking about visual stuff, so, I kind of want to see stuff. I don't like reading a book and then like feeling like I need to Google loads to kind of get the pictures to accompany it. So that is really good. It is quite sweary, but that's kind of very her. And I think I like it because you can hear her true voice. It's clearly been authored by her. Yeah. Or if someone has worked with her, they've kept it so true to her voice, which is nice, I think.
And when would you read it? Like, would you read it at the beginning when you're launching a business, or is it a book to read, halfway through if you're feeling a bit down? Like, when would you read it? Is it any female entrepreneur?
I honestly think any female entrepreneur. Yeah. So I think a lot of the books that I read for this, for this segment, I read them and I'm like, do you know what? I can see how this would have been useful to me starting up my business a few years ago. Maybe it's not so relevant now. Whereas actually, I think if you just want a bit of a pick-me-up at any stage, if you want that reminder that you're awesome and what you're doing is really good,
which we all need from time
to time, then this is a good book to read. Like, it's
brilliant.
It would just G you up. Let's see if we've got some more fun quotes from it. I've got a couple that I think I'd tagged in, a couple of little bits to remind us all. There's one bit that I would debate, which I thought was an interesting point, and I can see where she's coming from. She's become quite famous for saying this, actually, if I find the right page. So her quote is, "Money looks better in the bank than on your feet," which is like, don't spend all your money on expensive shoes. Now, obviously, there's slight irony in that maybe some of the money is gone now anyway from the bank, so maybe she would have wanted to buy some shoes.
Maybe.
I can see what she's saying. You shouldn't spend all your money. You need to, and we are very different. We've discussed this before. You're amazing. Like, you're very diligent when it comes to sort of business banking. I kind of just spend everything going. But I do think.
Wait, you're just disclosing this now, and we're in business together? No, I'm kidding.
These are our separate businesses. But I do think what's really interesting. I think. In business, how you dress and how you look does actually say a lot. And actually, I always see how I, like, when I buy like an expensive dress or a nice looking outfit and I know I'm going to be using it for work, I see that as kind of a working investment. I'm not going to put it through the books. I'm not going to charge it to my company. But in my head, it really is like an investment. I think sometimes you do need to look the part. So I don't think, and it's interesting because she was like living in the back of a car, and she was like, it was this, when she talks about her startup story, she was on really good money and refusing to spend a penny of it. And I think there's that balance, because I think actually, particularly if you're working with clients, if clients are coming to you, then they need to actually feel that you're successful and that you're good at what you're doing. And maybe if you turn up looking like a hobo, then that's a little bit like, so that was the only bit where I was like, I'm not sure I agree with that phrase. And what's quite interesting is obviously she was at the Girlboss rally wearing some kind of crazy like $10,000 dress, and she was like, the tags were in the back, I'm going to take it back. Like, okay.
She sounds quite a character.
She was quite a character, but it's nice. I mean, and it was really interesting. It was very different, I think, to kind of the kind of conferences that we get over in the UK. So with these reviews, I normally tend to say the things I like about the book and the things I don't like about the book. There genuinely wasn't much I didn't like about it. I mean, apart from perhaps the suggestion that I shouldn't be spending money on my clothes. Apart from, there's a quote from Donald Trump. Rip that page out. Yeah. I'm not gonna read it out. This was written a while ago. It was before he was president. But yeah, no, it's a good book, and I think if you want a business read that doesn't feel like a business read, where you're going to come out feeling positive, feeling like you have actually learnt stuff about entrepreneurialism. There's some really good quotes from people who work in the space. There's talk about investment. There's actual definite learning here. Yeah. And then she's spoken to a number of founders who then they give their own advice too. So it's worth the money. I mean, how much is this? $9.99.
Yeah.
I don't feel ripped off by this book. I would buy it for friends. I mean, I think that's always the tester. Would I give it to one of my friends? Would I, and I would. I think that it's a good book, and you read her story, and obviously her story was amazing. She, before it happened, and that's not necessarily her fault. I think it was, someone else was running the company. But, she managed to make something incredible out of something so small and out of a hobby. And again, it's that we're always saying this, you need to be passionate about what you're doing. So I think she's a really admirable entrepreneur. Yeah. And she's it's very likable, it's very honest. It's not all through rose tinted glasses. There's some real honesty in there, and you feel like you're learning stuff. So I think you are never too overqualified to read this book.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm going to read it.
Cool. There you go.
Thank you.